The plan was flawless. It was the culmination of years of fighting, suffering, and learning. It had to be. While the military assault team kept the Demobats occupied above ground, the core group descended into the literal heart of darkness beneath Hawkins' lab. They were splinters of a whole, acting in perfect synchronization. Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan, with a muscle, armed with Molotovs and stolen military flamethrowers, carving a path through the pulsing vines. Dustin and Lucas were the comms, guiding the strike team from the precarious safety of the fortified radio trailer. And in the center of the storm, in a sensory deprivation tank hastily constructed in the bunker, 11 floated. Beside her sat Will, his eyes rolled back, clutching Mike's hand so tightly his knuckles turned white. Will was the anchor, 11 was the weapon. For the first hour, they were winning. 11 found Henry in the vast red soup of his mindscape. It wasn't the Creel house this time. It was a twisted reflection of the Hawkins Middle School snowball, a perversion of a memory where safety was supposed to be guaranteed. They clashed with psychic force that made the ground shake in the real world. "You have grown stronger, Jane." Vecna's voice slithered into the minds of everyone connected to the hive. He sounded calm, almost bored. "But you still cling to them, your pathetic little attachments." "They are my strength," Elle screamed, hurling a psychic wave that shattered the dream mirror disco ball. But Vecna just smiled. It was a grotesque wet sound. "No, they are your tether, and tethers can be cut." The turn happened in a heartbeat. In the physical world, deep in the tunnels, a massive, unseen tendril lashed out from the darkness, knocking Steve unconscious and pinning Nancy to the wall. Jonathan screamed, unleashing his flamethrower, but the vines didn't retreat this time. They just kept coming. Above ground, the radio trailer suddenly went dark. The screams of Dustin and Lucas were cut short by the screeching chitter of a demogorgon tearing through the metal roof. And in the bunker, the anchor broke. Will's body suddenly convulsed. He let go of Mike's hand. His head snapped up, and when his eyes opened, they weren't Will's gentle brown eyes anymore. They were milky white, veined with black. "Will?" Mike whispered, terrified. The entity wearing Will Byers' face slowly turned to Mike. It tilted its head. A single trickle of blood ran from its nose. It smiled, a cold, unfamiliar smile. "He was always mine, Michael." Will's voice spoke, but the cadence was pure Henry Creel. "The first connection. The spy you nursed back to health. Thank you for keeping him safe for me until I was ready to wear him." Mike didn't even have time to scream before Will thrust a hand forward, blasting Mike backward against the concrete wall with telekinetic force that cracked the foundation. Inside the mindscape, 11 felt the severance instantly. The psychic feedback was like a physical blow. She crumpled to the floor of the dream gymnasium. Vecna loomed over her. The grandfather clock appeared behind him, its ticking deafening, drowning out the sounds of the dying world outside. The hands were seconds away from midnight. "You thought you were fighting a war, little sister," Vecna whispered, leaning down, his clawed hand caressing her tear-streaked cheek. "But you were merely waiting for the executioner." The clock struck 12. The chime rang out across Hawkins. In the real world, the 4 massive gates that tore the town apart in 1986 suddenly pulsed with blinding red light. They began to widen. The ground groaned, then shattered. The barrier between dimensions didn't just tear, it dissolved. The sky over Indiana turned the color of dried blood, and the ash began to fall. 3 years later, the earth was quiet now. The chaotic noise of humanity, the cars, the radios, the shouting, the crying, had been replaced by a serene, unified hum. The atmosphere had changed. The air was thick, cold, and toxic to unadapted human lungs, filled with the swirling spores that choked out the sun. The great cities of the world, New York, London, Tokyo, were overgrown ruin, draped in thick, slimy tendrils that pulsed with a faint red bioluminescence. There were no more nations. There were no more wars. There was only the hive. Creatures that were once human roamed the desolate streets. They were husks, their individuality stripped away, their flesh pale and cold, moving in perfect unison to the silent commands of the Mind Flayer, which now drifted like a colossal spider cloud over the ruined continents. Hawkins, Indiana, was the capital of this new world, the epicenter. The Creel house stood pristine atop the hill, untouched by the decay that surrounded it. It was the throne room. Inside, Henry Creel sat in an armchair near the fireplace. He looked human again, the handsome blonde orderly, though his eyes remained dead and black. He was sipping tea, enjoying the silence he had cultivated. He was not alone in the room. Standing by the window, looking out at the red nightmare, was Will Byers. He was dressed in a simple black suit. He stood perfectly still, his hands clasped behind his back. He was the general of the great army. There was no trace of the sensitive artist left in his face. Only cold, obedient efficiency. He was finally free of fear, just as Henry had promised. And in the corner, trapped within a shimmering psychic containment field that looked like spun glass, was 11. She was alive. Vecna had kept his promise not to kill her. Death was too easy an escape. She was kept in a perpetual state of psychic awareness, forced to watch the world she had failed to save. She looked thin, her eyes hollowed out from years of silent weeping. She looked at Henry, then her eyes drifted to the stoic form of Will by the window. Why? Her voice echoed weakly inside the glass cage. Why keep us? Henry set his teacup down with a delicate clink. He stood and walked over to her prison. Because, Jane, he said softly, admiring his reflection in the glass. Every artist needs an audience. You wanted to be normal. You wanted to be human. Look around you. He gestured to the devastated silent world outside the window, where a pack of demodogs loped silently past the ruins of the Wheeler house. Humanity was a disease, a chaotic, noisy infection on a pristine planet. I didn't destroy the world, little sister, Henry whispered, placing his hand against the glass inches from hers. I cured it. It is finally perfect. He turned away and sat back in his chair, closing his eyes to listen to the beautiful, unified hum of a billion minds thinking as one. The grandfather clock in the hall stood silent. Time had stopped. The nightmare was eternal.